In a twist no one saw coming, King Charles stuns the nation by naming Princess Anne as his heir, shaking the very foundation of royal tradition. Crowds outside Buckingham gasp. Social media erupts. For centuries, the throne followed the firstborn son. Until now, with a single announcement, the steadfast, no-nonsense Princess Royal steps into the spotlight. This isn't just a reshuffle, it's a royal revolution. As Anne quietly accepts the weight of the crown, questions explode. What drove Charles to bypass William? And can a monarch, built on duty over drama, truly reshape the future of the British monarchy? Opening shock. It began with a royal press release that no one saw coming. The screen lit up with the palace's official crest, and a single line changed the face of the monarchy. His Majesty King Charles III has named Her Royal Highness Princess Anne as his heir apparent. Gasps erupted outside Buckingham Palace. Crowds gathered. Phones buzzed. Reporters scrambled to make sense of what had just happened. Across social media, disbelief mixed with excitement. This wasn't just a change in royal procedure. It was history being rewritten in real time. Outside Windsor, well-wishers held up signs of support and shock. Inside the palace, the mood was quiet, but electric. For decades, the line of succession had followed tradition. Firstborn sons, the next in line. But now, that age-old path had been redirected by the very man who once walked it himself. King Charles had not only reshaped the future of the monarchy, he had stunned his own family. The world had one burning question: why now? And why Anne? In her 70s, known for her understated presence and tireless service, Princess Anne had long been considered the crown's most reliable workhorse, but not its future leader. She was steady, firm, and rarely drew headlines. And yet, that quiet strength may have been the very reason Charles made his choice. This moment wasn't about glamour. It was about stability. The decision set the palace into a spiral of speculation. Was this a temporary arrangement? A regency? A succession plan in motion? And what about Prince William, the heir the public had always expected? As the dust began to settle, attention turned to Clarence House. Cameras zoomed in, reporters leaned close, and whispers inside the palace grew louder. A reshuffling was underway, one that would not only change the crown, but possibly change the way the world viewed it. And so began the most unexpected royal chapter in decades. One where tradition met transformation, and Princess Anne, the Princess Royal, stood suddenly at the center of it all. The palace buzz behind palace walls, the announcement wasn't just surprising. It was seismic. It had all started in Clarence House, with a private summons from the king. No press, no aides, just Charles and Anne, two siblings who had weathered the royal storm side by side for over 70 years. A close confidant who witnessed the moment described it with quiet reverence. "I've never seen them like that, serious, but deeply tender." Charles didn't speak long. He didn't need to. The weight of the moment was in his eyes. His voice, though calm, carried urgency. Anne didn't interrupt. She listened. Then, slowly, she nodded. A quiet acceptance, a tear, not of fear or regret, but of duty. She knew what this meant, what it would cost. Elsewhere in the palace, word spread fast. William was the next to be called. The meeting between father and son was short, but charged. Onlookers could see the tension in their faces. William emerged with a tight jaw, shoulders squared. He said nothing, But the message was clear. He had not expected this. Staff were informed shortly after. A private message circulated internally carried Charles's request. "Prepare for constitutional change." The phrase sent chills through even the most seasoned aides. This wasn't ceremonial. This was real. Within hours, royal schedules were being redrawn. Advisors began briefing legal teams. Stylists and courtiers whispered about title shifts, wardrobe updates, and formal presentations. Clarence House turned into a command center. But even amid the frenzy, there was a strange calm. Because Anne had always been ready. She just never asked for it. What had begun as a quiet conversation between siblings had now exploded into a full royal reset. And the next step, explaining to the world exactly how this unprecedented reshuffling could even happen. Constitutional context. The headlines screamed, "Royal shock," but behind the uproar was a trail of quiet legal changes that made this moment possible. In 2013, a historic amendment quietly reshaped the rules of royal succession. Known as the Succession to the Crown Act, it ended the centuries-old practice of giving sons priority over daughters. From that moment on, birth order, not gender, would determine the heir. It applied only to those born after October 2011. But the spirit of that law had planted the seed for change. Still, naming Princess Anne, born in 1950, as the next monarch? That was unprecedented. Historians quickly pointed to royal women of the past, Mary I, Elizabeth I, Victoria, women who had ruled with power and purpose. But none of them had been chosen like this. They had inherited the throne through loss or war, not modern declaration. This was something else entirely. For the change to hold, Parliament would need to act, and they would. Within hours of the King's announcement, legal minds gathered in Westminster. The process would be intricate, involving several legislative stages, but the groundwork was already laid. Quiet talks had begun months earlier. Charles had planned this, carefully, strategically. The biggest factor? Public opinion. Recent polls showed over 60% of British citizens favored a hard-working royal taking the crown, regardless of gender. Princess Anne, with over 5 decades of service, hundreds of international visits, military honors, and a reputation for being no-nonsense and fiercely loyal, fit the mold perfectly. As constitutional lawyers weighed the technicalities, royal aides emphasized one thing. This was not about rejecting William. It was about choosing continuity, stability, service. The monarchy had evolved through fire and scrutiny. But now, for the first time in history, it was evolving by choice. Charles's motivation. Those closest to King Charles weren't shocked by his decision. They were surprised it didn't come sooner. For months, whispers of his declining energy had surfaced. Not illness, necessarily, but a recognition of time. The demands of global diplomacy, environmental summits, and domestic duties were taking their toll. He began thinking about the future, not just of the monarchy, but of his son. He wants William free of the glare, one royal insider shared. He knows what this life costs. He lived it. He sees what it's doing to his son. Charles had watched William juggle parenthood, climate work, and royal pressure. He knew the role of monarch would consume him. But Anne? She had no young children, no tabloid storms, no unfinished legacy, just a steady, tireless commitment to the crown. Anne's strengths became undeniable. She never sought attention, never complained. She showed up, quiet, prepared, focused. Whether at equestrian events, military ceremonies, or remote Commonwealth tours, she did the work without fanfare. Charles's vision was simple: a monarchy rooted in service, not symbolism. Anne embodied that. He had once seen himself as a reformer. Now he was passing that torch to the sister who had lived reform in action. The announcement's timing was no accident either. Fresh off the success of the UK's global presence at COP26, Charles saw a rare opportunity. The world was listening, and he chose to speak. In a way, the decision wasn't radical, it was logical. In a family where titles once outweighed experience, Charles had done the unthinkable. He chose the best leader, not just the next one in line. Live announcement. When King Charles appeared in the royal gallery, the world leaned in. Cameras flashed, reporters held their breath. The moment felt like a coronation in reverse. One king stepping back, another leader stepping forward. The room fell silent. Charles's voice echoed with calm authority. "Let my daughter, Princess Anne, succeed me in service to the crown." It was a moment that hit like a royal drumbeat. A daughter, now the future monarch. History made in a single sentence. Princess Anne stood nearby, hands folded. Her face was stoic, but her eyes shimmered with emotion. This wasn't ambition, this was duty. And it was heavy. William, standing beside Catherine, appeared composed. But the cameras caught it. His brief glance toward his father, his slow blink. Surprise was written on his face, but not resistance. He nodded slowly, applauded quietly, and in a rare moment of public unity, embraced his aunt. Anne didn't smile. She simply stepped forward, bowed slightly to her brother, and turned to face the future. A future no one expected, but one suddenly full of possibility. Anne's acceptance. As the gallery emptied and the palace returned to its usual rhythm, Princess Anne quietly stepped into history. There was no dramatic fanfare, no golden speech, just a private symbolic moment inside the palace that would be remembered for generations. In one of the smaller halls, rich with royal portraits and silence, Charles placed a coronet on the table beside her. It wasn't a crown, not yet, but it was the beginning. Anne stood tall, composed, and then spoke. Her voice was steady, her words few, but they cut deep with sincerity. "I vow lifelong service to Britain and the Commonwealth." That was it. No extravagance, no flourish. Just a promise. One she'd been living for decades, now simply spoken aloud. Across the room, Prince William applauded, then crossed the space between them and embraced her. His face, once tense, now softened. He whispered something no microphones caught, but the look they exchanged said everything. Support, trust, family. Catherine stood beside William, her expression calm and proud. She reached out, gently touched Anne's arm, and nodded in quiet solidarity. For a royal family so often accused of being distant, that moment was deeply human. Anne wasted no time. Within hours, her team released her first public pledge, a renewed focus on youth initiatives, environmental resilience, and expanded mental health support. These weren't just buzzwords. They were causes she'd championed for years. Now she would do so with the full weight of the future crown behind her. This wasn't just an acceptance of title. It was the beginning of a shift, a generational handover wrapped in humility, discipline, and sharp purpose. One that signaled something clear. Anne was not stepping up to reign with grandeur. She was stepping in to lead with grit. William's role redefined. After the applause and the headlines faded, Prince William found himself standing in a very different royal landscape. He was still the Prince of Wales, still a future king, just now after Anne. It was a shift that came with both freedom and confusion. A royal statement clarified his position. He remained first in line after Anne, the direct heir once she eventually stepped down or passed the torch. But for the moment, he would support, not prepare. And that, for a man raised to lead, was disorienting. Behind the scenes, William wrestled with it all. For years, his path had been clear. But now it was blurred. There were quiet moments where even he wasn't sure how to feel. A trusted aide shared that William felt torn, relieved on one hand, but strangely lost on the other. Still, in public, he played his role flawlessly. His first official message after Anne's appointment was supportive. "My aunt's leadership will bring strength and focus. We stand united as a family." That line mattered. It wasn't just spin, it was strategy. Analysts quickly began speculating. Would William remain a frontline royal or shift to the background? Would his future be about supporting the institution or transforming it from within? Catherine, ever the steady presence, leaned into her role. She continued her mental health work and early education outreach. In interviews, she was clear. "We support Anne's leadership wholeheartedly." Inside the palace, William's team began recalibrating. New duties were assigned. More youth programs, more educational initiatives, less pressure to perform as monarch in training, more freedom to shape his own identity. For now, his future wasn't about a throne. It was about proving that legacy can also mean reinvention. Public response. If the palace was holding its breath, the public wasted no time exhaling. The internet exploded. Social media flooded with reactions. Hashtags like #AnneTheQueen and #NewEra trended for hours. News anchors tried to keep up. Callers rang into radio shows with cheers, confusion, and even tears. One man outside Windsor Castle said simply, "She's earned it. No nonsense. Gets things done." Another added, "She's not flashy, and that's exactly what we need." Polls conducted within 24 hours showed overwhelming support. Over 70% approved of the king's decision. The public seemed ready for a leader built on experience, not just expectation. Still, not everyone agreed. Debates ignited over breakfast tables, talk shows, and news panels. Some argued it was a betrayal of birthright. Others feared it would destabilize the line of succession. Political commentators weighed in, asking, "If we can change succession once, what else can change?" But even critics struggled to deny Anne's record. Her decades of military service, international diplomacy, and commitment to the crown gave her credibility that few could match. Commonwealth nations responded quickly. Leaders from Canada, Australia, and New Zealand sent cautiously optimistic messages. While none fully endorsed the shift yet, their tone was respectful, interested, curious. One prime minister was quoted saying, "It's refreshing to see duty recognized over tradition." Within the UK, media outlets flooded their morning shows with royal scholars, historians, and MPs. Everyone wanted a voice in the conversation. But amid all the chaos, one thing became clear. This wasn't just about Princess Anne. This was about what kind of monarchy people wanted now. And Anne's rise had suddenly made the institution feel more real, more grounded than it had in years. Constitutional and parliamentary reaction. If the public was excited, Parliament was alert. Within days of the King's announcement, the House of Commons filled with tension. MPs across all parties debated the legal logistics of officially amending succession law to accommodate the shift. The 2013 Succession to the Crown Act had cleared the path, but this was something new. A living monarch naming his daughter as successor ahead of his eldest son. Legally possible, yes, but politically sensitive. The Prime Minister issued a carefully worded statement. "We respect the Crown's authority, but due process must be followed." That line, sharp, measured, set the tone for the next few sessions. Constitutional experts stepped in, offering clarity. Technically, Charles had not abdicated. He had announced an intention. Parliament now needed to codify it. That meant debate, amendments, and a formal vote, all of which would take time. In Scotland and Wales, additional voices joined the discussion. Some hailed Anne as a unifying figure. Others questioned the speed of the decision. A few opposition MPs demanded more transparency from the palace. Was this planned in secret? Where is the accountability? But the Queen-to-be had little time for theatrics. Anne continued her engagements as if nothing had changed. She toured hospitals, attended charity galas, shook hands with school children. The cameras followed, but she stayed focused. Working, serving, waiting. Inside Parliament, a timeline was laid out. The law would be debated by autumn and passed by year's end. The process wasn't flashy. It was parliamentary and necessary. Because no matter how modern the monarchy becomes, it still answers to one power greater than the crown, the people's law. Global royal perspective. The world didn't look away. Across oceans, in palaces and parliaments far from London, heads of state responded. Some with surprise, others with praise. From Canada to Australia to New Zealand, a message began to take shape. A working royal earned her crown. In Ottawa, a Canadian cabinet member called the move inspiring. In New Zealand, news anchors praised Anne's integrity. In Australia, headlines debated the constitutional implications, but local monarchists cheered, finally, a monarch built on merit. Republican voices, of course, saw an opening. They called the reshuffle evidence that the monarchy could be adjusted, and questioned whether it should exist at all. Editorials asked, if the crown can change, why not reconsider it entirely? But monarchist groups worldwide doubled down. They published statements of support, applauded Charles's wisdom, and highlighted Anne's unmatched dedication. Even historically neutral publications admitted, Anne is the monarchy's most pragmatic face yet. Across Europe, royal families from the Netherlands, Sweden, and Belgium quietly sent their congratulations. Some envied the boldness, others simply respected it. The international media painted a compelling picture, a crown transitioning from ceremony to service. And while Princess Anne remained stoic, the global response proved one thing: the world was watching her now. Anne's transition phase. The transition wasn't marked by golden robes or trumpet blasts. It began, as Anne preferred, with quiet duty. Within days of King Charles's announcement, the first steps of her new role took shape. Royal aides, now under her command, issued plans for an official tour, not across London, but to the edges of the United Kingdom. She wanted to begin where people felt forgotten. The message was clear: this reign would reach everyone. Her first destination? Northern Scotland, a remote town battered by weather and time. Anne walked its streets in boots and a raincoat, shaking hands with fishermen, hugging grandmothers. No spectacle, just service. That visit alone spoke volumes. This wasn't monarchy through palace gates. This was monarchy at the grassroots. At home, subtle shifts echoed through palace corridors. The Youth Empowerment Foundation, one of Anne's longest-running initiatives, was rebranded as the Anne Initiative. It would now focus globally, offering education, grants, and mentorship to underserved communities across the Commonwealth. For the first time in years, royal charity felt forward-thinking, not ceremonial. Her team also introduced decentralization. More appearances were scheduled in towns and regions long overlooked by the crown. While her father had reigned from London, Anne was determined to lead from all corners of the kingdom. Court aides updated internal systems, titles began adjusting across formal documents, and fashion advisors quietly transitioned her. Wardrobe still modest, but more symbolic. Behind the scenes, coronation planning began, but not as tradition dictated. There was talk of streamlining, fewer golden thrones, more community involvement. Anne, true to form, requested a smaller ceremony, grounded in purpose, not pageantry. This transition didn't feel like power changing hands. It felt like power finally touching the ground. The Princess Royal had become the crown's next steward, and she was shaping a monarchy that looked, felt, and acted very differently from the one the world had known before. William and Kate's family life. Amid the sweeping changes, the spotlight dimmed slightly over Kensington Palace, and for once, William and Kate seemed thankful. Their public appearances became softer, more intimate, focused not on duty, but on family. With Anne assuming the role of future monarch, the pressure that had loomed over William for most of his life finally eased. He no longer had to prepare for the crown, at least not now. That shift allowed him to reconnect with his children, and in many ways, with himself. Kate released a rare personal statement. It wasn't formal, it wasn't polished, it was warm. We support Anne's leadership wholeheartedly. Our family stands together, and that unity is our strength. It struck a chord. A new generation of royal watchers, often skeptical of tradition, responded with unexpected admiration. Inside the palace, changes were subtle but meaningful. George, Charlotte, and Louis were told of Anne's role through bedtime stories and quiet talks. No royal briefings, just parents explaining a different kind of future. William wanted them to understand the responsibility, but not fear it. As Anne took center stage, William leaned into causes close to his heart. He expanded his work on youth mental health, launched new education grants, and partnered with environmental groups. His schedule, while still full, was finally his to shape. Speculation swirled in the press. Would William eventually take a quieter, civilian role? Would he step back entirely? Those questions lingered, but inside his home, the answer was simpler. He was still a leader, just not one chasing a crown. Kate, always grounded, kept her focus on her early childhood campaigns. She visited schools, comforted mothers, and began creating a digital platform for parental mental health. She was building something, not for headlines, but for the future. And while the world debated thrones and titles, the Wales family found something they hadn't had in years: room to breathe. Final reflection and cliffhanger. As the dust settled and the monarchy reshaped itself in real time, one truth became clear. Princess Anne was no placeholder. She was the plan. The firstborn daughter of Queen Elizabeth II had now stepped forward not out of ambition, but out of necessity. And in doing so, she had redefined what the crown could be. Anne wasn't draped in glittering gowns or grand declarations. She moved through the palace halls in practical heels and steady silence. And yet, her presence carried more weight than any ceremonial scepter. In the quiet, in the action, she had become the monarchy's new architect. King Charles, aging but clear-eyed, stood beside her in public one last time. Cameras caught them walking slowly at the gates of Buckingham, hand in hand, a moment of familial peace rarely seen. It wasn't just symbolic, it was a passing of trust. But the future was far from settled. Would Anne modernize the monarchy or lean into its traditional core? Would William step further away or be pulled back into the spotlight? Would the public continue to support this reshaped institution or begin asking if it was still needed at all? And what of the Commonwealth? Their voices had been quiet, for now, but as the coronation neared, their support or withdrawal could alter the future of the crown. In a world of unpredictable politics, climate crises, and rising social change, the question hanging in the air was urgent. Can a no-nonsense princess lead a 1,000-year-old institution into the next century? Or will the weight of tradition finally pull it down? What do you think? Has Anne's moment ushered in a new era? Or is the monarchy facing its final test? Comment, share, stay tuned. This story is far from over. Princess Anne now stands where few expected, but perhaps where she always belonged. With tradition shaken and history rewritten, the world watches. Will her reign modernize the monarchy or spark deeper questions? One thing's certain, the crown has never felt this real. And the royal story, it's only just begun.